I'm going to be kicking off the second week of this series. If you really want. Shane started the first week off, and I'm going to start today off with a question. And here's the question. What do you want? What do you really want? I can tell you that no matter what popped into your mind, I can tell you the one thing that all of us really want. We want our own way. Is that not true? I want my way, and you want your way. We want to do what we want to do, and we want to do what we want to do now. So on one hand, I can say, what do you really want? And you can come up with all these good things, but running in the background of your mind is that one thing. It's what you really want. And it is that you want your way, and I want my way, and we want it right now. Like I said, Shane kicked off the first week of this series, and he had a few phrases that we're going to come back and we're going to revisit them this morning, just so we can all be on the same page. I know it's been a few weeks since we've been here. So the problem is this: if we always get what we want, if we always get our way, we lose our way. In fact, isn't it true that we often get in our own way whenever we get what we want? He also said, if we always do what we want, we end up where we don't want to be. And the third thing is, if we get whatever we want now, we may not get where we want to go later, right? All of us have experienced this. We have undermined our own future, our own hopes, and our own dreams because we got what we wanted, and we got what we wanted now. And now we wish that we could go back and not get what we wanted, right? Because what we got kept us from going where we really wanted to be. And then Shane dove a little bit deeper, and he said this. He said that lurking in the shadows of what we want is what we value. And the reason he said lurking in the shadows is because there is very little in culture, there's very little in our media, there's very few relationships that we have in our life that will focus your attention on what we really want, what is really important, and what we value. And that's what a value is. That's all a value is. A value is what is important. And around that want, lurking in those shadows, it can be who you want to date. It can be the job that you want. I want to purchase this right now. I want to live here. I want my husband or my wife, or for me, it's usually my kids, to act like this. All of those wants lurking on the fringe are actually the things that we value. For example, relationally, if I were to say, what do you want relationally? I could say, I want to get married. Okay, but what do you value? What's behind that? Okay, well, I just want to date. Okay, well, that's great, but what's behind that? What do you really want relationally? What do you really want financially? Well, I want to be rich. Well, good. I hope that you get there. But what do you really want? What is right outside of that? That is your value. And we rarely stop to think about what it is that we value. And it often goes so much deeper than that. What kind of person do you want to be? We're going to talk about that next week. What is your character, and what kind of person do you want to be? You know what you want, you know what your relationships are like, and you've got some goals financially. But who do you want to be? These are the kinds of deeper issues that will drive us past our surface level wants. And that's where we landed last time. Isn't it so true? We will never get what we want until we discover what we really value. And what I have learned is that unless somebody holds my attention to what I really value, I don't stop long enough to pay attention, to really discover what it is. And nobody can answer that question for me, and nobody can answer that question for you. There's no preacher, there's no teacher, there's no book, there's no podcast. Nobody can answer that question for you. Who do you value? What do you value? Who do you want to be? And until you discover what it is that you value, you will never get what you really, really want. Now, as a Jesus follower, we can take this one step further, can't we? Because we believe that there's a God who invites us to call him Father. He is our heavenly Father, and he sent his Son into this world. And the amazing thing about Jesus is that he consistently points us to what we value, not what we want. He pointed his audience past what they initially wanted to what they ultimately wanted, from what was right in front of me to what was right beyond right in front of me. And we believe as Christians that we will never get what we really, really want until we discover what is most valuable. And that's Jesus, and that's what he points us to. But even if you're not a Jesus follower, even if you're not willing to stretch that far, you still have to figure out what it is that's most important to you. You still have to figure out how to value what that is. Now, that should be easy. I mean, our world tells us it's so easy. We can do a little exercise. Maybe we do some journaling, some reading. We think about it, and we can just discover it. We write it down, and then we move on. But you know what? It's not that easy. And that's what we're going to focus on today, because it is so important. The problem is that choosing what is valuable is unnatural. And not because you lack discipline, and not because you need more information. It's not resolved with learning something new, and it's not resolved with better discipline. Because like I said, this is about something much, much deeper. There is this internal conflict that each one of us experience. It's this conflict between what is natural and what we really value. And most of us have a really hard time breaking through to embrace what it is that's valuable. But when we do that, it changes everything. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you today. I think that it's what you ultimately want for yourself. But I'm going to tell you, it is not an easy battle. I think that the person that describes this battle the best is in the New Testament. It's Paul. Paul was a Pharisee. Now, he was a good law-abiding, he was a Jewish man. He did not like Christians, actually, but he wrote a bunch of letters to some church that he planted, and this is from one of the letters that he wrote. He wrote a bunch of letters to some Christians that were living in Rome. And if you were a Christian in Rome in the first century, it was not a safe place for you to be. So in this letter, he describes the conflict that all of us wrestle with. And he puts it in terms that I think that we can all understand. So here's what Paul says. He says, "I do not understand what I do." Boy, I feel that. Now, even if you don't like the Bible, I bet that you can relate to that. I bet that you can identify with this, and you know that this is true, because every single one of us could stand up right now and we could tell a story about something that we did, and after we did it, we looked at ourselves in the mirror and we said those words: "Why did you do that? What were you thinking?" The questions start. Why did you sleep in? Why did you call her? Why did you eat that? Why did you say yes? Why did you agree to that? What is wrong with you? And we say, "I don't understand what I do." Well, that's the point of today's message. There is this conflict, this deep conflict between your human nature and what you value. And it's a big deal. And like I said, getting more information and more discipline, that will not help. It won't be fine, because it's much deeper than that. Here's what Paul said: "I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but I hate what I do. You know what he's saying? He is saying, I know what I really, really want, but I've settled for something less, and I ended up hating it. Now, let me say to just a few of you, let's be honest, because some of you right now are sitting out there and you are hating yourself because you have done what it is that you didn't want to do. And if you're honest, you were there the whole time, and you would like to blame your parents. You would like to blame how you were raised. You would like to blame your boss. You would like to blame society. But right now, you hate yourself. You're in that mode. And Paul says, I understand that. But if I continue to do what I don't want to do, after a while, I hate what I do. And hating what I do is about half an inch away from hating the person that you see in the mirror. And maybe that's where you are right now. And you understand that this is a big deal and that this is a wrestling match. It's a daily struggle. Maybe for some of you, it's an hourly struggle. And it's easy to say, I don't know why I do what I do. Paul goes on and he says, if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. Now, here's what he's talking about. Remember, I said Paul was a Jewish man. He was a really good Pharisee, which just meant he was really good at keeping the law. And actually, Paul says, he talked about himself saying that he was one of the best. And I think the struggle that he's describing here was before he became a Jesus follower. You see, he wasn't a bad person. In fact, the problem was that he was so ridiculously good. Because here's what he was saying. As hard as I try to do good, as much as I am committed to the law of God, I just couldn't pull it off. No matter how hard I try, I knew what I really, really wanted, and I just couldn't do it. He goes on to say, for I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Now, I don't know about you, but that should make you feel better because this guy wrote half of the New Testament, and we can all relate to that. There's somebody out there that has been through what we feel. So what's his point? The point is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. We naturally want what we want is in conflict with what we ultimately want. What we naturally want is always in conflict with what we ultimately want. And what we ultimately want is, I want to help you understand, is what you really, really want. That's the value of unnatural. You know this. You know that we've all gotten what we naturally wanted, and we've ended up with a thing that we didn't ultimately want. But when it comes to your nature, nature knows nothing of fairness or compassion. If you want to know about our human nature, what nature is really like, look at nature. You say, nature's beautiful. It is, but nature's only really beautiful from a distance, isn't it? Because when you get super close to nature, what do you see? You see that nature lacks forgiveness. There's no forgiveness in nature. There's no generosity in nature. There's no compassion in nature. And there's no grace. And the nature that we see all around us, that nature that we see in the animal kingdom, that is part of who we are as human beings. In other words, that human nature, that just go with your gut, this is what it would look like if we did that. If you need a list, it is cheating, lying, racism, adultery, me first, revenge. If you embrace your human nature, that's what we would look like after a while. We can look at all of those 6 things, couldn't we? And we would say, wow, that is a surefire way to undermine our future, isn't it? It's a surefire way to undermine your career, your relationships. Well, the Paul who told us I can't do what I want to do. Also wrote in Galatians, maybe you've heard this before. This is what we're talking about. When you follow the desires of your sinful nature, because that is our nature. Well, Jesus talks about this, the Apostle Paul elaborated on it. Our nature is broken, and there's something fundamentally wrong with us. It's not just information, and it's not something that we can resist. And I know that it's not a polite thing to say, but all you need to do to prove it is think about it. Do you ever do what you don't want to do and don't know why? The answer is yes, we do. And there's something fundamentally broken in each one of us. When you follow your sinful nature, the results are very clear. What he's saying is we could put up a giant board here and we could ask, what are some of the results of our broken and our fallen nature? And we could all start throwing around different words and we would all go, yeah, I see myself in that. I see a little bit of her in that. I see a little bit of him in that. Yes, those are my kids. Yes, I know people like that. Yeah, I've got some of that in me. Because we all know what we're tempted to do. But he gives us the list anyway. He says, sexual immorality, impurity, lustful pleasures, idolatry, and sorcery. You know, idolatry, that's just putting our things before we put people, right? We say, don't touch that. No, you can't borrow that. Don't walk on that. That's all it is. Hostility, quarreling, jealousy, like when we celebrate what other people are going through, when they have a setback or something happens in their life and we celebrate that. You know that thing you say, and I thought about this the other day, what do we say? We say karma, and we just move on. The list continues with outbursts of anger, selfish ambition. We have got to have our way, don't we? We want to be right all the time. It continues, dissension, division, envy, drunkenness. Isn't it true that all of us are one relationship away or two family members away where we could say, I don't know why I do what I do, but it's destroying my family, it's destroying my finances, it's destroying my career. Maybe it's destroying your prospects for your future. But you know what? All of these things have the potential to do the same thing. Now, I know that you are all good people, and they all come so naturally to us. In fact, the odds are that more than one of you, actually probably most of us in this room, have done some of these things, and they have kept us from getting what it is that we really, really want. No matter what you know or how disciplined you are, it is a daily battle. And here's why we're going to talk about it for the next few weeks. It's because this is a battle that you can win. And there's a way to embrace your valuable over your natural, a way to get what you really, really want. And what I believe, what we were all created for. The brother of Jesus was James, and he gives us this word picture that really puts things into perspective. And I love that he gives us the terminology that we can think about this battle. What James said was so powerful. He said, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away. This is so visual. Can you actually see a picture of somebody that's trying to do the right thing? They're trying to embrace what they really want, and something comes along and just drags them away. And that's the battle. That's where we live, and that is the real struggle. And then he says, then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when in full grown, gives birth to death. That is that sin is what ultimately kills stuff. Sin is what undermines the future and the way that we see ourselves. It's where we come to a place where we say, you know what? I don't know why I do what I do, but I'm starting to hate myself. And then James ends where I'm going to end today. He looks out across his audience, writing to these people, And I just imagine he's writing these people that he's never met. It's 2,000 years ago, and he's, sitting with the candle writing it down. And now it's 2,000 years later, and we're half a world away, and these words still apply. They're still so applicable to us today. But he ends by saying, "Do not be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters." Do you know why they say this? Because he knows how easily we get deceived and distracted with what we want. And we often forget what we ultimately want, don't we? He says, don't be deceived. Don't trade the ultimate for the immediate. And don't trade what you ultimately want for what you naturally want. And I know for me, nothing breaks my heart more when you can see somebody making those decisions that undermine their own future. And I know that all of you have someone in your life like that, where you've seen that firsthand. You've seen them make that choice. They simply do what they don't want to do. And that keeps them from getting to where they don't want to go. And that is so hard to watch. There is enough stuff in our world that we can't control. Things that make it hard in our marriage, things that we don't have control over when it comes to graduating. Or maybe it is just the things in life that undermine your future, because we often choose what is natural over what we ultimately value. But this is what drives me, is I believe with all my heart that whether you're a Jesus follower or not, that following Jesus will make your life better. That Jesus will always point you to what is valuable and not to what is simply natural. We believe in heaven and we believe in eternity, but what's beyond all of that? Jesus makes your life better. And many of you know that battle that I talked about, that battle is worth the fight. It is worth the price that's paid, and it's worth it for us to fix our eyes on something that goes beyond the here and the now. So before we go, I have 3 questions for you to answer. 3 questions. What do you really, really want? What is most important to you? And why is that? Why do you want that? The second question is this: what keeps dragging you away? Because sometimes you hear a message like this, or somebody shares their story, maybe you read a book or you hear a podcast, and you're like, you know what? You're right. And your brain starts going, I need to readjust. I need to make some changes, right? Goes all through there. And then you start saying, I have 25 reasons that this isn't hurting anyone. It's not a problem. But you know what? It's time to be honest. It's time to answer what keeps dragging you away. And then the third question is, how much longer? How much longer do you plan to let what I naturally want drag me away from what I ultimately want? How much longer? Do you think 5 years, 10 years, another marriage? How long do you want to waste your time letting what you ultimately want from what you naturally want? Will you spend some time this week discovering what it is that's most important to you? Let me pray. God, thank you so much for today, and thank you for who you are and what you teach us. And I pray that you would help us take a step forward in answering all of these questions. Help us to discover what it is that we really, really want, and help us to open our hearts to clearing what is dragging us down. And God, I pray that you will help us to hear what it is you have to say and to show us what is really important. And we pray these things in your name. Amen.